everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of MOJO Rising, How to Make Cancer Suck Less. And we have a great episode for you today, and let me explain why. So I have invited what you might consider in a strange way to be the godfather of MOJO to join me for a conversation to drop some knowledge bombs on what he's learned about the cancer industry. Now, he has a fascinating background of not only understanding nutrition, but understanding herbs, understanding how it all comes together in the cancer land. He is a survivor. He is a cancer coach. He has done just a little bit about everything in the cancer world. So without further ado, I would like to officially welcome Peter Brodhead to MOJO Rising. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining us.
Great. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here. And I'm just so excited about the work you're doing. And it's wonderful. It's so needed. And you're doing such a terrific job. And Oscar is such a perfect person to do your show with. It's a real honor. It really is to be supportive.
The entire reason I met Oscar in my cancer battle is because of the gentleman that we're here with today. So just know my life was in his hands at one moment with a phone call where he quickly said, I know the perfect person for your Julie to work with. Call Oscar in Atlanta. And so before we get started, thank you so much for introducing me to the man who taught me everything I needed to save my life. Because
I know it was such a great thing. It was such a perfect serendipity that he was in town. I couldn't believe it. It's like, wait.
Yeah. So Peter, will you tell our audience a little bit about yourself? So how did you start to get into this field?
Yeah. So it started way back. So I got involved with the natural products industry in 1978. So I started reading herbal books when I was in high school. So it went way back. And in 1978, my wife and I was working at a health food store in Macon, Georgia, Annapurna Health Foods. And my wife, Janie, and I decided we really wanted to live on the coast. And we went over to Savannah for the first time, and we fell in love with Savannah. And I wanted to windsurf, and I liked the beach. I grew up in Sarasota, Florida. And Savannah was like a European city. It was, way different than it is now. And we found out a few months later there was this tiny little health food store that was only been open for 2 months, and they were closing it. They were going and they put it up for sale, and things all came together. We bought the store and we put our roots down. At that time, it was a really rough neighborhood. It was right on Forsyth Park, and now it's part of glitzy center of historic district, fancy realm. So we started in 78 at the basic roots of the natural products industry, and just grew it from there. And we were focused on a lot of education. So we were really fortuitous, and we brought in the finest herbalist and the knowledge guys in the entire natural products and herbal industry. So we had all these great herbal teachers that we brought. So I had incredible time over the years bringing the best of the best to Savannah and educating them. And the store kept growing and growing. And then finally, I became a certified nutritionist on the way, studied that. I studied homeopathic medicine with Robin Murphy and got certified there. And then I discovered Donnie Yance. And I had lost a friend to glioblastoma who had just turned 40 years old in the year 2000. And at the same year, I discovered Donnie Yance, and I said, I got to do something on this cancer issue. I've lost a close friend, and I've got to know everything I can. Read a paper Donnie read. I said, this is the most brilliant paper I've ever seen on cancer. I've never seen anyone integrate all these systems together so well. And from then on, I studied everything I could with him. And then in 2009, I went out to Oregon and did his professional training for physicians. And so I went out for 2 separate weeks. We did like 50 hours of training, 10 hours a day, actually 60 for 6 days a week. And we were lucky to have Dwight McGee teach me. Chanchel Cabrera taught me. Jason Miller taught me. So I had the team that I had out there was absolutely first rate. It was amazing. And then came back. I worked at an acupuncture clinic. When I came back, I had a really good staff at the store, and I went into private practice. And right off the bat, I actually started working with some pretty heavy duty cancer cases that I was working with people. And then had to come back to the store. I couldn't do both. The store was kind of falling a little bit ragged in the supplement area. I came back and then just, have grown that and, done that. Always brought a team of people to the Medicines for the Earth conference in Black Mountain
So I was going
because
to say,
all
so
those teachers are there. Yeah.
for
It's
all
been
of the
nice doing that.
listeners, let's just know that this gentleman has a little nickname, and his nickname might be Party Peter.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was because he was a wild and crazy guy, and he
Yeah.
is a very fun gentleman.
Yeah.
But what I learned, which my industrial psychologist heart just loves even more, is that it's because he brings his entire staff to
Yeah.
come and
I
learn
did.
his greats.
Yep. I knew from that experience, it's like that one-on-one with that, it changes you when you get to be with great teachers and you have that experience. And I knew they'd bring that and bring that back to the customers, which they did. It was great. So
That just shows you your commitment to your customer base, though, because that's
yeah,
not a cheap thing for you to make that
no.
investment. So kudos to you.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it was great. It was a great joy to do it. Really was a
Yeah.
great joy. But anyway, 1999, we after 41 years, we both looked at each other and said, it's time to change gears. And we were fortunate enough to have the owner of a coffee shop next door to us buy our store and kept the same integrity and everything. So the store's doing really well. She's doing a great job. And and I was really thrilled because they're going to actually send two of their vitamin people to Medicines of the Earth. And I'm like, yes, they're going to carry the tradition on. I was really worried about that. I was like, I hope they can do that. So that thrilled me.
That's awesome.
Really
And,
thrilled me. Yeah.
and then, so are you retired now, or are you still out and about in this world?
I'm retired, but I'm doing a big lecture next week on understanding your blood work. We're going to do a deep dive into blood work and create a handout for people that they can just get their blood work and read the sheet and know exactly what it means and what the ideal functional medicine levels are, and then what they can do about it.
Well,
So
we'll have
that's
to have you come back once after you've done that
so yeah,
to
so that's my project right now. But I still do like public talks, and then I've got clients that I see doing nutritional counseling. And then I'm working on a farm 2 days a week, helping out a woman who's incredible. She's 92 years old and does her own organic farm. So I go out there for joy, and then I learn out there. I put the headphones on and I listen to things like episodes of MOJO Health
Oh,
while
I
I'm
love
working.
it. I love it. So,
So
well, let's talk a little bit. Let's start to dig into some of the things that we want our
sure.
audience to know. And so, let's just take a look at your life. And when you think about your life, what are some of the big things you do that are outside of the typical standard American lifestyle or diet that you think are really important in your lifestyle?
Yeah, there's a bunch. So, on the physical level, I'm really big on exercise. So, for me, my wife and I use a personal trainer twice a week for, weight training. And then I'm a member of a bike club, road bike club. So I do a lot of bike riding. Well, right now I'm doing about 100 miles a week. So it's like I do three rides, and that keeps me aerobically going really well. I really am a firm believer in meditation. So every morning I have a meditation practice and I do that. And then my diet is, you know, I'm a nutritionist and I've been doing this forever. So I look at foods through phytochemicals. So when I'm looking at foods, I'm thinking, okay, this has got this polyphenol in it. This has this. This is going to help my biome. This has got this compound. I need these omega-3s. So I do think of food in a very, I guess, science way, but these foods are delicious. So it's not like I'm depriving myself anything. So I do, make sure my diet's really healthy. And sleep's better when you retire and you don't have business and you have all that stress. So
I can't wait.
that helps, right? I'm
So,
not worried about, ex-employee or this piece of equipment breaking down or this happening or customer slips on a banana and they're going to sue us or,
yes.
all that kind of stuff.
Now I laugh because people look at me and I still take quite a few supplements, but when you have
Yeah.
had almost a complete recovery and feel great, I'm willing to
Yeah.
take a bunch of. So I think right now I take 47 a day. So Peter,
Yeah.
knowing that you owned a health food store, how many supplements do you take a day?
A lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do like a multivitamin, I do CoQ10, and then I do a lot of botanicals. I do turmeric, green tea, resveratrol are some the triple things that I always do. I get extra zinc in what I take, my formulas that I'm using. Um, take ginkgo, bacopa. I play around with Ayurvedic herbs. So I use like I'm doing some interesting Ayurvedic products from Banyan. They're herbal powders. So I'm doing this one as a brain tonic. One's kind of a vitality tonic. I love adaptogens, love them. And so, I'm always taking, right now I'm using a Luthro, but I've always got various adaptogens that I have on my plate that I do in my daily thing. And I love super tonics. So, Chlorella, spirulina, superfoods, bee pollen, all kinds of things I'll put in the mix. So I take a lot, and plus being post-cancer survivor, I'm covering those bases. So basically like botanical treasures kind of thing. So I've really got those core things that downregulate numerous pro-cancer pathways. I've got those bases covered. And that's really important, for me.
I want to come back and do a double circle around that. So hold on just to that, because I want to definitely make sure we spend a little bit of time, because I know all of us are going to want to be focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
But a bigger question, why do you think taking supplements is so important when you're so careful with your diet?
If you go on the Environmental Working Group website and you see farming practices, soil depletion, chemicals in the environment, even when you're eating as clean as you can, even organic, you're getting industrial organic. They can't produce all those things on an individual level like that. You don't have like a biodynamic farm nearby that's doing, everything perfectly. And we eat nothing but basically totally organic diet whenever we possibly can. I mean, you go out to restaurants, you have fun, but you still, they're lacking in certain things. And so I really know that. I know it keeps my energy levels incredibly good. My immunity definitely really good, on there. And one of my favorite little immune things that it's really not talked about is regular old-fashioned vitamin A. You don't realize how important it is protecting epithelial tissue from getting infections. And so it's protecting you from like respiratory tract infections, through urinary tract infections, skin infections, any kind of infection. And it's that front line of defense, and it's the cheapest supplement you could imagine, And I know Natura has that great AD&K product, but I take a regular sort of fish oil derived vitamin A as a frontline thing that everyone forgets about for the immune system. And I, of course, get my vitamin D levels checked, so I'm always keeping my D in the optimal quadrant, on doing that.
You just mentioned so many things that I think are important that I just want to highlight for our audience. And the first is, you can eat a red pepper today but it's not the same as the red pepper your ancestors ate 50 years ago. It is different in the quality and the outcome it can deliver to your body.
Yeah.
And so supplements are valuable because of the mass industrialization of our food sources.
Yeah.
And the amount of toxins that are in our air around us, in our environment, in our cleaning supplies. So everywhere you go, our bodies are being attacked in a different way. We're not getting as much of the support. So things like magnesium or vitamin D are so important to take in a supplement.
Yeah, I know this. And of course, magnesium is in my supplement mix. That's like the essential mineral outside of zinc,
Yeah.
On there. So, yep.
I even take it now twice a day. I mean, that's exactly.
I do too. I use a magnesium glycinate twice a day. Yep.
Yeah. For sure.
Yep.
Okay, so when you think about this is like we'll get into some really big cancer topics in just a minute, but if anyone is listening that doesn't have cancer, what would you say? What is one or two things that everyone should do for their health?
Yeah, number one is, when you're eating, really choose intensely brightly colored foods. And I mean naturally brightly colored foods, because all of those will be telling you a lot of information. So include lots of spices, things like turmeric, berries. You can get potatoes that are purple. You go for density of colorful foods with lots of flavor, because these polyphenols are these superstars. And that's like one of my big things now. Is I'm really big on building the biome too. I mean, that's really, really important. And my favorite handout that I give people is one called Let's Get Cultured. And it's all about how to build a very healthy biome in your diet with all these types of fibers that do all these different things and all these polyphenols. So it's really going after, a fundamental thing in the diet is going after these polyphenol rich foods. They're amazing. And in cancer, all of them have and they downregulate cancer growth markers. They downregulate cancer markers. They're anti-cancer. So they're all highly supportive. So it's like thinking that way when you're looking at your food. And so that little funny word polyphenol is running through my brain when I'm going anywhere shopping. It's like, oh, look at the color of that. Get that one. Add that extra cinnamon to this. Do this, and get really familiar with that.
That was my New Year's resolution, was to try and eat 5 colors of vegetables every day. And I
Nice.
thought
Yeah.
it was going to be, there's not a lot of colors of vegetables, so it's not like you have a
Right.
ton, but
Right.
it does take some effort. But it is wild how much better I feel eating so many vegetables and so many different vegetables than I ever have before,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other rule, is I say eat as many vegetables as you can with as much variety as you can, on there. So that's my big one on the diet, really, is doing that,
Yeah.
So, and understanding stress. The other thing I love to train people on, it's another lifestyle hack, is if you understand your vagal nerve and how that helps your parasympathetic nervous system. Now, so you have the sympathetic, which is your fight and flight nervous system. And then you have the parasympathetic, which is rest and relax. Well, your immune system really works when you're in parasympathetic mode. And you can just, if you learn some really simple breathing techniques, you can train yourself to move yourself to a parasympathetic state instantly. And the key is this: you do a small breath in, hold your breath for like a second or two, and make sure your exhalation is slow and even and long. And anytime your exhale is longer than your inhale, it shifts your nervous system to parasympathetic.
You heard it here, guys. That's a very quick thing. So I'll take a quick minute, take a small breath in, hold it for a second.
Big breath, long out. Yep. Yeah. Andrew Weil does a 4-7-8 technique on YouTube. So go on YouTube, do Andrew Weil 4-7-8. Great training on parasympathetic breathing. So
I love it.
So that the vagal nerve is a big deal these days in everything in research. So, it's just a great hack to know.
Especially I can think about this at road rage, if you're frustrated at the grocery store,
right.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I love it. Well, so I did a little bit of research before our conversation today, and one of the things I thought was so awesome is how you simply explain how cancers form. So I wanted to ask for our listeners, if you would take a quick minute and just explain, in your perspective, how is cancer formed?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, we have a protective gene in the body called the P53 gene. And the P53 is a cellular regulating gene that makes sure cells behave correctly. And so vitamin D is something that really helps the P53 work well. When we start eating bad diet, stress, toxic chemicals, heavy metals, the standard American diet, fast food restaurants, rancid fats, rancid omega-6 fats in particular are horrific. All these types of things. It's throwing a monkey wrench into the P53. And so they call it also the guardian of the genome. When the P53 gets altered, cancer can form. Cells then can go into a mutation process. And then as they, group together and get bigger and bigger, and I forgot what the cell number is, as soon as they can get a blood vessel to attach to that cancer, you start going into, big problems can start happening at that point. So it's the guardian of the genome. Polyphenols are the things that always help keep P53 healthy. And, on the slideshow I have all the foods that help P53 and all the things that mutate P53. But that's really the start of cancer. It's one of the major drivers, is that guardian of the genome getting askew.
And how do you think, in your opinion, does it get askew?
How does it get askew? Once the signaling goes off and you've damaged things and you've had the wrong things and you don't have that protective signal, it's like you're at the middle school and the principal has left and you've got these wild seventh grade kids running around throwing spitballs in the room and everything else, and the teacher and the principal are gone and there's no one there to discipline anyone, and things go askew. So it's a little bit like that. If you can kind of, analyze middle school kids going out of control.
I can just see that right now in the pandemonium
Right,
in the classroom for sure.
right. And
And
so, in a sense that's basically on a cellular level, that's the start of the big problem. And it is kind of, with my knowledge. And so, I'll be going into, I'll shop sometimes at Walmart because I'll find a lot of organic foods there. Like I get my Pete and Jerry's eggs there, or whatever, And then you're looking at these shopping carts and your eyeballs are going, oh my God. And all you see are like, Mountain Dew sodas, and everything is a processed food, and there's no real food in their shopping cart. And you're going, this is a P53 nightmare.
yeah,
You know,
it
every one
is.
of these things they're consuming. High sugars, of course, are terrible. And there it is. Things go askew.
So I think it's important for our listeners. Only about 10% of cancer is due to the genes you were born with,
Right.
which
Yeah.
means
Correct.
90% of cancer has a cause that likely you have something to do with, whether that's diet or exercise or
Right.
environmental. So we want to think it's because of it's not our fault, but it is. So I just want to be the one to say that be the
Yeah.
tough.
And if our detoxification systems aren't working right, I mean, understanding your lymphatic system and how exercise moves your lymph, because that's detoxifying you. And people that are sitting around all day, and they say sitting is the new smoking. Um, you know, they're not moving their lymph, they're not getting things moving. So the junk that's going through them is not being cleared out. And so it's very, very important, you know.
I even bought a trampoline at
Yeah,
the age
that's
of
that's
44,
outstanding. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of the best lymphatic things you could possibly do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do this Zach Bush 4-minute exercise thing. If you go on, Zach Bush is an MD in Virginia, and he's incredible, functional medicine guy, and he has this wonderful video on YouTube. You should get on it. Zach Bush's 4-minute exercise routine. And so when you're working a desk, every 47 to every hour, you need to get up and do the 4-minute thing, and it's moving all the lymphatic. It's activating you're activating nitric oxide to open up blood vessel flow, and it's an awesome little thing. So when we're in our travel trailer and we take little breaks in our camper, we hop out in the parking lot, and Janie and I do the 4-minute Zach Bush thing and get everything going.
I love it as well.
So
You
there are so
should.
many hacks out there that are so great.
That's the thing of, my life is completely different for people who knew me 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago,
Yeah.
or 3 years ago. But I don't miss a single moment of my old life because it's
Yeah.
just small hacks is really what it is,
Yeah, there are. There are just all these great little things you learn and little tricks you got in your toolbox.
But I think it's important for people to know, like, because you have a part to play in cancer forming, you
Yeah,
also have a part to play in cancer healing or never getting cancer. So
precisely.
I'd like
Yeah.
to spend a little bit of time there because we don't think we can play a part proactively, but I really now believe everyone that's listening can do their part to make their body inhospitable to cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you can do it. And you need to understand blood work, and when you're going to your doctor, you need to go a little deeper than what the doctor is doing. You'll have standard blood work, but you need to keep your vitamin D levels in these really optimum ranges, because vitamin D is a regulatory hormone. It is not a vitamin. It's a hormone that is regulating hundreds of functions in the body. So I call it the guy that goes to the fuse box and makes sure that all the circuits are working in your house and you're not blowing any circuits. And so you've got to keep your D, blood levels. I like it between 40 and 60. And then when I'm working with people who are dealing with cancer, I like it to be around 75, and in a really optimal rate, because it's turning the immune system on. It's helping that. It's keeping P53 working. It's doing that. And you want to look at things like, is your blood getting thick? Is fibrinogen really important marker you need to look at,
Yeah.
as another one. And I look at highly sensitive C-reactive protein. How inflamed are you? And you can get this thing just called the HSCRP, get it looked at, and then you can look at those numbers and go, whoa, my blood's getting a little thick. Cancer loves thick blood. It loves this. It loves low oxygen, thick blood, inflammation, all these underlying drivers. So you just want to make sure, it's like when your car is getting done, you want to make sure that the fuel injectors are working and everything's going. So you look at things like that. You look at some key markers. And then if you are diagnosed with cancer, I've become a real hawk on the copper levels and look at ceruloplasmin, really important marker.
Yeah.
But I think like looking at C-reactive protein, fibrinogen, vitamin D, these are markers outside your normal range. They're not expensive tests. These are normal things. And there are all kinds of options you can do where you can actually get your own blood work done if your doctor is in agreement,
Which is
There's
great. Yeah.
there's Labdoor and there's Life Extension Foundation does a great job, and you can check different sources and do that. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit outside of what we know your expertise is, and that's other ways to begin to harness an inhospitable biome for cancer. And so one of the things I noticed you talked about was saunas. And I know many people I know either have a steam room or are a member of a gym, but they really don't make the time for it because they don't understand the benefits of it. So like that's something that would be a really great self-care thing to take a minute and meditate or to think about things. But
Mhm.
what are the actual benefits of a sauna and what's the
Yes.
right timing?
Saunas are remarkable. They're really, really they do so much. So one of the things that happens in your body when you get exposed into this high heat level, it activates a protein in the body called heat shock proteins. And heat shock proteins activate an immune response, and they're turning on the immune system. So, in cancer, it's like fevers can kill cancer. They used to do this whole therapy called Coley's toxins in the 1920s, where they give people this wild concoction of bacteria stuff that would force them to have a raging fever, and their tumors would disappear almost overnight. So in a way, it's like an immunotherapy
Yeah.
of doing that. So the body goes into high temperature. So cancer can't do well when there's a fever, going on. So you're creating that. It also has big effects on your mood. It's great so it's an antidepressant. So people who do saunas find that their mood is far better. It's really good at the cardiovascular system. It opens up blood flow, helps dilate the blood vessels, opening up when you're sweating. And of course, the obvious is you're getting rid of toxins. And one of the first toxins that it gets out of you is plastics. So it's really important because BPA, which is in everything, styrenes, BPA. I mean, we're bombarded with plastics, plastic wraps, saran wraps, styrenes, phthalates, all this stuff. When you do saunas, that's one of the key things that you start removing is plastics that are in you, and we're getting microplastics from everything, on there. So saunas are very, very important. Are you familiar have you ever heard of Rhonda Patrick? I just want to let the whole audience know about Rhonda Patrick.
Yeah.
She's a PhD nutritionist, and she's got a podcast called Found My Fitness, and she is a genius and incredible to listen to. Her talks on sauna. She does deep dives into sauna therapy and what it does for the body. And she's fascinating. She interviews the world's top scientists, and she's so smart that they're blown away by her. And so if you're a nerd at all and you want to go deep dive, check out Rhonda Patrick.
Awesome.
She's like one of my heroes. She's like incredible. So
I love it.
yeah.
Okay, now here's another thing that I don't know that everyone out there thinks about. Let's talk a little bit about EMF. Any thoughts on EMF or the impact of the world that we're living in right now everywhere we turn?
Yeah, I know they're bombarded, and I've seen all this data. I'm not really an expert on that. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of, it's funny, but it's so like everywhere that I'm sort of afraid to go in there and look at it because like I don't want to become paranoid. I'm not a person that likes to be paranoid.
Yes.
And I think we just have to keep our vitality up. My son is a really big qigong practitioner and teacher. And it's like keep your chi strong, keep your energy, your own personal energy field strong. And and of course, you're the perfect example of positive attitude, positive energy,
Yeah.
So I love people looking at, outside the box to it, people like Joe Dispenza and people that do, are pushing the boundaries of, I'm reading Deepak Chopra's new book on quantum healing and he just wrote a new one on that. And I love quantum field stuff, where you put that energy out and the universe responds.
Responds for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's dig into a little bit of the areas where I know that you are a true wizard. And so let's talk about, okay, let's rip the Band-Aid off. What are the absolute worst foods that the standard American diet has in it or that people eat? So what would be the one thing that you'd say, like, guys, you just have to quit. You just have to stop.
Yeah. Number one is the processed vegetable oils, the omega-6 fats that are cooked and everything. So throw out the soybean oil, throw out the corn oil, get rid of the refined, even refined canola oil. It's a little less harmful than the other ones. Look at your processed foods that have these fats in them. They've stopped using trans fats so much. They don't use so many partially hydrogenated. But, you cannot have these in your diet. They are highly inflammatory. They will turn off the P53 gene. They're terrible. And just go in and you substitute your oils. And the 3 oils I use in my kitchen are olive oil, number 1. Number 2 is avocado oil. Now, avocado oil is really great because it's a monosaturated oil like avocado, like olive oil. And you can cook it at very high heat. It doesn't smoke. It has no flavor. So you can use it to replace any of these crappy oils in your diet. And then I have coconut oil. And those are the 3 that I use. I use olive oil first because the polyphenols are so valuable. And any woman or man could have a HER2/neu gene defect. And so you have breast cancers that are HER2/neu driven. Well, the many other cancers are also HER2/neu driven. Olives and olive oil are the number 1 thing that stop that defect with the HER2/neu gene. So it's a very valuable thing. So it's your oils, and then of course your refined sugars. You just gotta say bye-bye. Janie and I did the Whole30 diet this first month of January, which is 0 sugar. That means any package that even has a smidgen, we weren't allowed to eat it. So we went on a completely sugar-free diet, And honey's kind of interesting because there are a lot of benefits in it. Donnie Yance has written about honey. Honey has things that actually feed your microbiome, and there are things about it. So if you are using a sweetener, a little bit of honey can be, alternative to use. But it's basically, being eagle eye on those 2 things are the real havoc in that. And of course, high fructose corn syrup is the havoc of all. And that's what causes fatty liver. That is the worst. So, and then, I don't believe in artificial sweeteners either. So,
yeah,
on those, but those are they're the train wrecks, I think.
It was interesting because I'm not an olive fan and I was HER2 positive. And so one of the things Oscar had shared with me is I had to eat olives. And I tell you what, I eat 7 olives a day. It doesn't matter what happens.
Awesome.
I eat those every day because it can only help,
You'll get to love them.
Exactly. So, okay. Yeah. So we did the worst foods. Now let's talk about, regardless of if you have cancer or anything you have, what are some of the most beneficial foods you can eat for overall health?
Okay. Kiwi fruit. Kiwi's really interesting. Kiwi stimulates one of your most important probiotic species called Akkermansia mucinifolia. And Akkermansia puts the lining back in your intestines. So it creates a natural mucus lining back in your intestines and plays a very, very important role in healing leaky gut. And so leaky gut is a big issue with a lot of people. And, gluten, of course, I think is another one of these, can be very problematic for a lot of people. Especially American wheat. And also people need to be aware, I want to jump topic just slightly, is you have to understand how bad Roundup is, glyphosate, because glyphosate originally was an antibiotic and it kills your biome. Now, the thing that people don't realize is farmers are spraying glyphosate as a drying agent before they harvest crops. So I just went on the environmental working group and found out that hummus, if it's not organic, has the highest levels of glyphosate of any food. Now that's a shocker, because hummus is considered to be a super healthy food. It's really good, but they spray beans really heavily with glyphosate. Glyphosate goes in and kills your biome in your gut. It's really, so you've got to really focus in on organic where glyphosate is being used. So go to the environmental working group website, ewg.org, get informed about doing that. So, we had to nix all non-organic beans in our house, which I wasn't really using, but we were in a hurry when the grocery store wanted to get some hummus, really hungry. And I was searching all over and I said, we can't eat this anymore. We can't even get near this stuff on doing that. So that's another really big one that, that's wrecking people's biomes. So back to kiwi. So kiwi helps that, but they found that kiwi can reverse DNA damage. So that's another thing that happens in cancer is DNA goes to scry when the P53 gene goes off. 3 kiwi a day repairs your DNA.
I mean, I feel like that's just something we should just be doing then. We shouldn't even
Yeah,
think about it.
we should just be putting foods in there that are doing things like that. They are the ultimate superstars of that, you know. And of course, I am big on fermented foods. So it's like got to start getting understanding fermented foods and going, you know, for fermented foods when you can, because you've got to build a healthy gut because there's so much in immunity that happens with the bacteria in your gut that's used. So lots of variety of fibers. So it's just, you know, fiber all the time, you know. And you know, I can tolerate dairy some. So you know, if you can tolerate dairy, organic kefir is a superstar when it comes to probiotic species and what that can do for you. It's ridiculous how many species of bacteria and how easy it is and how great it is for the gut, you know, overall on doing that.
And I know there's one more that at least Oscar always talks about, and that's mushrooms. What are your thoughts on
Oh
shrooms?
yeah,
Yeah.
all of them.
Yeah.
Number one is if you have any kind of estrogen positive type cancer, and you know, ER positives aren't just breast cancer and ovarian cancer, and that it's also glioblastomas, brain cancers, and lung cancers are driven by estrogen. So is prostate cancer, and mushrooms affect the aromatase enzyme, and they block estrogen. So they're incredibly helpful for doing that. Now, mushrooms have beta glucans, and they have these compounds in it that activate an immune response. I mean, they're completely different. So the body is kind of like with mushrooms, it's an interesting relationship. They're high fiber, but they're funguses. And so the body's kind of going like, well, it's a fungus, but yet it's good for me. But then so I'm going to activate my immune system, and they act as immune tonics and activate the immune response. And so they're just always helping your immunity. Even the little white button mushrooms and every mushroom out there has got benefits. You know, some are superstars. I mean, shiitake, you know, are incredibly good. And shiitake have value also in antiviral properties. So when people are dealing with viral issues, and many cancers are virally activated. And so, but just in general, they're you know, they're great, and they're so delicious. But you know, all mushrooms should be done. They have a very interesting antioxidant in them called ergothioneine. And ergothioneine cannot be cooked out. And here's a rule on mushrooms. Mushrooms are very high in a compound called chitin, which is the same thing that's found in crab shells and lobster shells. If you eat a raw mushroom, you can't digest it. So all mushrooms need to be cooked.
Okay.
So when you're using those, you know, be sure you cook them really well so they're really thoroughly broken down, and then you're going to get all the benefits of mushrooms. So we eat mushrooms constantly, you know, in our diet. It's a big thing.
I've even been hiding them in my eggs in the morning because I'm like, you might as well just throw
I
some
do
in.
too. I do, you know, eggs, spinach, everything. And anytime we see mushrooms, we cut them up and we throw them in everything. Yeah.
So I have heard, and I think this is a myth. So I just want to say, I think this is not true, but I want to ask you, is there any time that a mushroom would be like a contraindication against something else, or anytime you should not eat a mushroom?
You know, the main thing I've seen is people who have fungal issues. So if in candida infections and things like that, there's debate back and forth. I don't know what the real answer is, but they were saying, you know, people are dealing with candida issues that they should avoid mushrooms, at least in that initial phase of cutting it down, just because it is candida's got fungal properties and mushrooms might. That's the main one that I've seen on mushrooms, you know. But you
Any
know, Italians live a lot longer than most people, and they eat a lot of porcinis. Um, they live longer than almost anyone, and they found they have the lowest rates of MS of anywhere in the world. They have lower Parkinson's disease rates. They have all these things, and they are the highest consumers of mushrooms of anyone in the world, other than, you know, next is Japanese and Chinese,
Yeah.
you know. So
So I know one of the tips and tricks that you had shared through our family was when I started immunotherapy that I should be eating pears.
yeah,
And so now I eat pears all the time because
yeah.
but what are other things, like if you were to break apart for chemo or radiation or immunotherapy, any specific foods that are really advantageous to eat?
Yeah. So in immunotherapy, it is very interesting. So your number one thing they found between responders and non-responders in immunotherapy, and thank God immunotherapy is gaining traction because it is a much better option. There are problems with it, like anything, autoimmunity and things like that, but you can work with all that. Just as like Oscar did with ETMS is incredible at covering all the bases. It's amazing, on what can be done to do that. Like Chinese astragalus is one of the great fundamental tonics of that. But building a really, really healthy biome can make the difference in responders and non-responders in that. So, I wrote a handout. I think I sent it in my big group of my immunotherapy handout. I do a real deep dive into it. I go through all the pathways and all the stuff, but all the foods that are really helpful. So you really need a healthy biome, and you need it for chemotherapy also. It makes a big difference on responsiveness in chemotherapy, on doing that really big difference.
So if folks out there aren't considering taking a probiotic and eating fermented foods, like right now is your wake-up call. Just go ahead and
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's polyphenols again. They feed there's all these foods that feed your biome. So, I have that handout. So, keep it on Mojo Health and you pass it on, please. Because I really did a deep dive on really people need to be aware of every food that really plays an impact on that biome. The healthier you get it, the healthier everything works in your body.
For our listeners, you're going to be able to go to the comment section of this episode, and we will make sure that is linked for everyone so that you can actually see this document, because we know that that's going to be something you're going to want to download.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great one that I'm really big on, on doing that. That's one of the big things. And, I am big on mushrooms and immunotherapy, and I'm really big on astragalus. I think astragalus is just such a fundamentally important thing to do for people doing chemo or immunotherapy. It plays such a role on modulating the immune response. And that's what mushrooms do. They modulate so that if the immune system is too active in the sense of autoimmune, it tones it down. When it's too low in a lot of chemo and you need it to bring it up, it helps bring it up. So these plants are so brilliant, and they just have hundreds of functions, and they're way smarter than we are when it comes to knowing how to take the body in the right direction. And they just do crazy amounts of things, that's there. So getting these complex compounds in your body are, really incredible. It's information. All this stuff's information. Food is information,
Okay, so what are some of the things you'd suggest for people who just want to make their body inhospitable to cancer? Maybe they're not going through active treatment right now, but they don't want a recurrence, or they want to avoid it to begin with. Any foods that you would say are really good just to make it inhospitable?
Yeah. Well, again, I go back to keep the biome super good, keep your polyphenol levels, lots of keratin-rich foods, again, which are in there. Eat plenty of mushrooms that are there. Get those fundamentals in place. And if you are eating meat, really go for grass raised, grass finished, grass fed. Look at the environmental working group for information about the cleanest chicken, cleanest beef, cleanest lamb, cleanest eggs. They do food scorecards that are fantastic. And you can get an app for your phone from the environmental working group. So when you shop, you can hit the app and it'll tell you what foods to buy. It's really cool and it's handy. So when you're shopping, you're doing that. So you really are trying to flood your body with all these micronutrients and things like that. And you're creating a terrain that cancer doesn't like. Cancer loves inflammation. Cancer loves sugar. Cancer loves, and I have rules by how cancer behaves. I sent you that one, my little quick sheet on rules. And it's a great little guide, because it kind of goes like, cancer loves this, cancer loves that.
Yeah.
So I as an educator on the vitamin aisle, I was always working with customers thinking, how can I make a handout that's quick and easy and will really inform the customer? And so that's always been my thing. So I'm constantly making new handouts. They're like, oh, this will be great. This is a really quick, easy thing. And I've got them on, the breathing techniques and the Zach Bush thing and anything that I come across. I come across an incredible podcast on something, I'll transcribe and make a handout on it, because if the information is really valuable and it's quick and easy, that's my thing.
Peter, you are such a not only a lifelong learner, but a lifelong educator of others. I love it so much. So
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. Education is huge. That's just, that's what I did. So
All
really
right.
big into that.
So you mentioned organic earlier, but when is organic a must versus when is it an option? Like when you give any advice for our listeners there?
Yeah. I keep talking about environmental working group, but anyway, they made that list called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And so they've gone through and they've just changed their ruling this year. They found that they were spraying blueberries a lot more now. And blueberries are now on the Dirty Dozen on list. So what is nice about that list is they have the Clean 15, which means the 15 foods that are the least likely to have sprays, so that when you're shopping, you can go, well, I can get an avocado, for example. It's fine. Pineapples are okay, doing that. But I cannot eat any apple because the apples are always one of the worst things on that list. So that's a really important list to go by, to know which foods are the worst because they've measured those for pesticides and everything like that. So
Yeah.
it's an important one.
Okay, now I loved one of the things in one of your talks was talking about the power of seasoning. And I think that's awesome that everyone can go into their spice cabinet and find some really good things that are not only tasty, but really impact, up the ante and what they're cooking. So you mentioned earlier cinnamon, but what are some of the other big spices that we should be just throwing on anything we can to up the value?
Yeah. So paprika. Okay. That's pretty mild in that, but you look at the color. It's that dense color. It's easy to do. It's so high in lycopene. And if you go into lycopene, it's a form of beta carotene. And what it does is when cancer cells are growing, the communication between cancer cells gets dysregulated and you get this uncontrolled growth. Well, what lycopene does is it actually says, nope, we're going to reconnect. We're going to have the gap junction straighten out and you're going to go back from a cancer cell back towards a normal cell. So you can get huge amounts eating paprika. Cayenne is another great one that, you use. Rosemary is like my favorite superstar because rosemary is ridiculous what it does. And it's, incredible in liver detoxification. It helps acetylcholine, helps our brain work better, does that. So your rosemary, sage, and thyme are all like amazing. Black pepper helps you absorb food better. So you often buy turmeric supplements. If you're buying curcumin, you'll often see bioperin added to it because it enhances the bioavailability of the turmeric to get it in your system. So seasoning with black pepper is really important. But I like cumin. My wife made this amazing Mideastern recipe that's this spice blend that has like coriander and cumin and all this. And we're putting it on these foods and it has amazing flavor profiles that are really, really good. So, it's like get bold with your spice rack and play around and season. And of course, turmeric, we all know that's the superstar. Ginger, it's amazing. If you ever been to a Thai grocery store, on Buford Highway, I love the Buford Highway Farmers Market. Oh my gosh, that's like a paradise place for me to go. And if you've ever tried galan gal, which is a Thai food, it's very spicy, but it's a superstar in being a powerful anti-inflammatory. It's like a cross between ginger and turmeric. It's like the first cousin of those two. So they're just be bold.
Yeah.
Know that your spice rack is medicine.
I love that topic. Let's just re-say that your spice rack is medicine. Don't be afraid to throw more spices on, and will amp up the medicinal properties of everything you eat.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a big deal on that. Really, really great.
Okay, so I know we're just coming off of dry January for many of our listeners.
Yeah.
And so we're coming back in. I was going to say, and so you mentioned earlier, I think you said that rosemary was a good liver detox. Oscar's talked about broccoli sprouts as well. Anything else that you would say?
Okay, yeah, broccoli is amazing. I mean, the sulforaphane and DIM and the compounds in there are amazing. They're wonder workers, and that's one of Rhonda Patrick. Boy, does she go into sulforaphane. So if you want to go deep into stuff on what broccoli does on that. But I also like to I just believe like you should have a bottle of milk thistle in your house. And my other nutrient that I love for detoxification is N-acetylcysteine, NAC. So NAC is a powerful amino acid that activates the production of glutathione by your liver. Glutathione is the master antioxidant for your body that controls, detoxifies. It helps get heavy metals out. So, I dry January is ending. I said, well, occasionally we're gonna have a little wine or something. So I went over to the health food store that I used to own and bought a bottle of milk thistle and I bought a bottle of NAC and I bought a vitamin C. And I said, you know what? This time, if we ever have a drink, we're taking those three things. We're going to have everything in place to detoxify our liver. So we're not going to be damaged,
I mean, I haven't tried this because I quit drinking with the cancer, but my assumption is if you were to do these things, your hangover would be way less.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't think you'd get one,
Yeah. I was going to say, so these are the things you can build up your body to make it suck a little less, not only with cancer, but everything.
And, I always love, a lot of people need to realize too that at, nighttime is when your liver detoxifies. And so feeding your liver for bedtime is really good because your liver is doing all these processes. So taking milk thistle or NAC before you go to bed with some vitamin C, you're giving your liver an incredible toolbox to be able to efficiently detoxify when you're asleep. And so if you're working on those kind of pathways, it's great to know, timing is a big thing. I mean, Donnie Yant's been going to they're going to be getting it where they're going to figure out that chemotherapy should be done on a circadian clock, that certain times of the day, certain drugs work better than others. And the timing of them is, it can be very important in effectiveness. And I'm big on, now we could go on a whole thing on the fasting and chemotherapy sometime if we want to get into that topic.
It was so powerful in my
tools I use.
Yeah.
With people,
and actually the podcast we have launching Monday, Jenny Smith, who just beat triple negative recurrent breast cancer, stage 4.
Wow.
Ned, she was told to call hospice from a healthcare system in Texas that's one of the best. And she is now cancer-free as of Monday. And she would credit so much of it to the power of not eating, of choosing to abstain and really fast.
Yeah, I have had numerous people that I've worked with who completely never had a neuropathy at all going through chemotherapy. None of these side effects. They sail through it. And I'm very rigorous about how you do it and what you do. I've got a handout I made all about it. I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
Oscar may have one too that he works with people, but I thought, well, you'll have what I do. You can modify it or whatever,
I love it. Now, okay, what about cookware? Any suggestions around the right cookware or things like that to use?
Yeah. I mean, make sure that you're buying, number one, glass for storing everything. And you can get these great things, glass containers with lids, always store all food in glass. And then I'm either big on, my favorite stuff really is some of the cast iron with the enamel lining on them, like the Le Creuset kind of stuff, and then stainless steel. So we only use stainless steel, glass, and that kind of cookware. That's all we will touch, in our house.
Okay.
So cookware, get the aluminum out, please. And I don't trust all these green no stick things. I just don't trust them. And I have actually found that the Le Creuset style, traditional old French, with that, nothing sticks to that. They're easy to clean. Eggs are usually the worst offender that I find when I'm cooking.
For sure. Okay, I'm just gonna ask you a couple more questions. So the first one is, okay, a supplement aisle better than most people on this planet. And so if you were to say to something, listen, and you've given a couple things, you've mentioned vitamin D and magnesium and vitamin A as really good things. But if you were to say, for the Gen Pop, just do a couple of these, what would you say? Vitamin D and magnesium, I'm guessing for sure. Any others that you say are just must-dos?
There are so many choices, and you can be overwhelmed on what you do. Make sure your vitamin D levels are really good. Use a good solid multivitamin just to cover bases. I like ones that if the B vitamins are in there, they're coenzymated, or you can get the food grown ones, which are also good. They can be a lot more expensive. So, but I end up recommending, just for people budget conscious, Life Extension makes a fantastic 2-a-day multi for $11 a month. And it's all coenzymated Bs, and every little cofactor is put in it. And it's just a very smart, low cost multi, and there's no copper and no iron. So it fits a lot for, cancer profile, but they're better, more expensive ones, but this is in the very affordable range looking at that. So, I'm a big believer in fish oils, really big believer in omega-3s and what they do is anti-inflammatory. So fish oils are a big piece that I do. And there are many good ones. I'm a big fan of the company Nordic Naturals. Of course, Natura has the supreme one because they use the omega-7s and the GLA, and it's brilliant. It's like the top tier, top tier. It's the the Lamborghini Rolls Royce of the formulas out there. But I've gotten so adjusted to things like fish oil, and I'm a big believer in it. And I really believe people should get the omega-3 test from Omega Quant, where you can order the kit. You take one drop of blood from your fingertip, you send it in, and they tell you what your blood levels are in all your essential fats. And then you can look at it and go, well, I need to really amp up my omega-3s, or I might be okay. And you really need the science. It's like, let the blood work tell you where you're at, on doing that. So Omega Quant is great for testing that. And I use actually the liquid fish oil from Nordic Naturals because it doesn't taste fishy. It's very reasonable, and I can get my high dose fish oil that way. So, I'm a big user of that. So that I consider fish oils to be paramount, on there, multi fish oils. And then, a base, get some turmeric in there, get some of these other really high polyphenol things. And then, there's so many things depending on what your issue is, of course.
So, and then I'm going to ask you the converse of that. And that is when people would come in to your store and ask for this, and you'd be like, no, don't take that. That's not worth your money or not worth your energy.
Like,
anything that you would say, like, just go ahead and don't worry about this, because
but it used to drive, weight loss fads always just drove me nuts. And then the next thing would come out. It's like, no, don't get near this stuff. So, there are different forms that come out, and we look at things, and, forms of things change. And I'll look at research and go, no, we really shouldn't carry this product anymore. This is not good. Or, another form, something is far better. So, I often will do it on sometimes minerals when people just want to get like a magnesium oxide. I'm going like, well, did you only absorb 4% of this magnesium that you picked up at the CVS? And if you use a glycinate, it's going to do better. And I just realized I was listening to this one that was interesting, because there's a form of magnesium called magnesium threonate, which is well known for going to the brain, but it's like 4 times more expensive. It's super expensive. So I was always like, well, I don't know. So then I just heard Robert Roundtree, who's like one of my favorite functional medicine doctors in the country. And, Oscar knows his work really well too. And he goes, no, I've looked at the research. You can buy the glycinate and it'll get to the brain just as well. I'm like, well, this is great. People don't have to spend $30 on this magnesium, and they can spend $15 and get a glycinate and do really well. Yeah. So, there are always these things that come up, on doing that.
All right. And then my second to last question is, if you were to choose which supplements or vitamins you should invest more in, where is it worth to go to get the very best of the best? Are those, what would you say are the types of supplements, whether is it the vitamin D that's mixed in with things, or iron, or things like where are the ones where if you're going to blow your wad, where do you blow your wad?
Yeah, you've got to know your companies. I mean, right now there is so much sort of scandalous stuff going on where they're taking products off Amazon and testing them and finding they have little or nothing in them. So if it's an off-label, an Amazon like off-label, you can't trust it. You've got to know. Now, Consumer Labs has a great website, and they go through and they assay supplements, and they make lists of what passes and what doesn't pass. So I use Consumer Labs a lot for giving me accurate information. So I trust companies that have their own labs and do their own work, that have been around a long time. So I have a big list of companies that I could, do. I mean, but one company that I really trust is Now Foods. They're huge, but they have their own labs. It's family run. They assay everything. Mark Blumenthal from American Botanical Council, who is the gatekeeper for herbal quality in the United States, has found that, if they find heavy metal or any kind of contaminant, it's booted out. But there are numerous companies. That's just one of numerous ones. Blue Bonnet's another company I really, really trust. Still, the owner's still there. I do like to have the companies that the owner is still there, because I've watched this change over. Someone will retire, the company gets taken over by someone. Can I trust them, on that? So I get nervous when companies get sold, because I don't know who's in the driver's seat anymore. And are they just going after product? And I have to look, like an example, I was looking at a company that They were using Sabinsa's C3 turmeric in their product. And I was like, this is the one Donnie uses. This is the good stuff. And I went back to the health store, I looked at the bottle, they weren't using it anymore. I'm like, shoot, I don't know if I can trust you anymore. What is going on here? You know?
Yeah.
So a lot of times when you're looking at labels, it's important to look at the very side print. And if they're showing the raw material supplier that's making these products, you can be much more assured if it's a good line. So you'll see things like carnitine. If it's Carnipure, that's from Lanza out of Italy. They're really good. I know these raw material suppliers, so I'm looking at them like a hawk. You know, minerals, Albion from Trace Mineral Research. A lot of companies will use Albion bisglycinates. They're excellent. Albion Labs makes some of the finest minerals for high absorption. Donnie uses that in his magnesium product. I mean, Donnie always, he never misses a thing. No stone is unturned. I mean, I will tell you.
I was going to say,
That product line, you know, it's just, you know,
it's the best of the best. I know
it's the best of the best. You know, it is. You know, no questions asked. It really is. He's a hawk on it and really, really knows. So, you know, and in herbal lines, you again want companies that have been around forever. David Winston, Herbalist Alchemist for extracts, outstanding. Herb Farm, still outstanding. Gaia Herbs has been bought. I still think they're testing really well. They do know your herbs, and you can do a QR code and it'll tell you when it was pulled out of the field, what the assay was, what the product quality is. So I definitely have full faith in Gaia on the herbal products line. And some of the health food store lines, they actually use some really good stuff. So some of the private labels you'll see in a health food store, they're coming out of Herbal Vitality out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Mitch Coven is the owner of that company, and they have incredible labs. He is incredible level of integrity. He makes these products for everybody, and he does like Donnie uses them for making Power Adapt, Vital Adapt, I think. I'm not sure. Donnie might go, but he has been. And we all know if it's coming from Mitch, it's coming from there, the quality's great, you know. So I do look at underneath who's there and who do you really know, you know, on
which,
that.
again, my industrial psychologist heart loves the answer you just gave of you look at the leaders to make sure you can trust the leaders. They're
Right.
people you can really rely on.
Yeah.
So I love that that's your answer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really where you want to go.
Yeah. Okay, my last question for you is if you were to drop, you know, any knowledge bombs, you know so much about cancer. So what would you say that we haven't discussed today would be like, you need to know this, or this is really important, or anything else that you'd say, okay, for a cancer patient or someone recovering, what are any more knowledge bombs you think are critical?
Wow.
It's a tough one, I know.
It is a tough one because there's so much. So, you know, the knowledge bombs is you do want to be following those important blood work markers to know that you're in there. Another thing that's important in cancer is understanding and Donnie really teaches this, the microenvironment around the tumor is what these are factors that you're really trying to control. And one of the areas that is really important is knowing the pH of the body and keeping your pH more alkaline. So when a cell cancer is acidic by nature. It likes to grow in acid. It likes poor blood flow. It likes stagnation. It likes all these factors that are, you know, inflammation, stagnation. So in cancer, you really want to understand that, and you want to make sure that those pathways are really clear. So you've got to have your bloodstream flowing really well, and you want to make sure that you're checking your pH levels. And so you can check your urine pH and your saliva pH. And the bottom line on alkalinity comes to this. The more mineral rich the diet, the more alkaline you become. Minerals are what buffer the pH levels in the body. So if you're getting plenty of good mineral rich foods, you'll get more alkaline. And tumors don't like that. They do not like when the pH around them starts getting more alkaline. The immune system can recognize it and go after the cancer. So I think the acid alkaline is another really important piece to understand when you're working with cancer issues. Okay. And just knowing those key drivers and then knowing that you can change those. You know, you really can. You have control. You know, you can make your blood flow really well. You can get more alkaline. You can reduce your inflammation. You keep your copper under control. You do keep your vitamin Ds optimized, and you're really creating a terrain that is anti-cancer, is not friendly to it. And you have a healthy biome, and you've got lots of polyphenols to do everything, going forward. And that's really, on that physical level. And then you've got your mental, emotional, spiritual too, that you got to take care of, and
which
move
is so important.
Yeah.
You've given so much information here. So I just wanted to give a recap of a couple of the things that I found most insightful.
Sure.
So the first is you dropped eat bright colors. So everyone out there, when you're at the grocery store and your produce, make sure you're choosing as many colors as possible, and then add a few more before you walk out of the department, because it's worth getting eat the rainbow. Okay, I love this one. Take some long, slow breaths. So really work on your parasympathetic, your immune system. It all fits together. So when in doubt, take the moments of stress, meditate, and take those long, slow breaths where their exhale is slower than the inhale.
Yep.
Okay, the P53 is so important for cellular regulating. And the good news is polyphenols, vitamin D, and I think you said kiwi could be really good in this area. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great. We talked a lot about microbiomes and the importance of investing in your microbiome, especially, we didn't mention this, but if you take an antibiotic, if you have anything that's non-organic, as we heard with the Roundup, anything like that, your microbiome is one of those things where you need to tend to it all of the time for months and months to make sure it's in really, really good shape.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
All right. We talked about saunas and meditation being really good places to relax your mind. We talked about swapping out your oils to make sure the oils you have in your house are olive, avocado for the high heat ones, and coconut.
Yep.
No sugar tonight in your coffee, no sugar tonight in your tea. Make sure you take that out in whatever capacity you can, and don't think you can use Splenda in its case. That's not the situation. Make sure the sugar substitutes are also off out of your house and out of the list.
Maybe a little stevia, but
yeah. But besides the fact, we don't want you out there, snorting equal. That's not the path. So yeah. A couple of really good foods to consider. Of course, fermented foods. You mentioned kefir. You mentioned mushrooms, all of them, but shiitakes being really great. And then I love this of spice it up. Don't be afraid to add some additional spices in your cooking, because every single one of those spices can add additional medicinal properties to every single bite you eat.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Broccoli you mentioned. And then for those partiers out there, you mentioned milk thistle and NAC as really good tools to help cleanse your liver.
Yep.
And then last but not least, you talked a little bit about your pH and some alkaline. So make sure you're using your strips. You're making sure you're giving your body all the alkalinity you can. That starts with your water. So make sure you're adding bicarbonates or other things to your water to get that alkaline water flowing through your body. But really make sure you are testing. And I think the overarching thing you mentioned over and over and over again is to be a data G and to use diagnostics to predict what you should be doing, because that is the overarching thing. It's not all of our bodies are not the same. All cancers are not the same. All approaches are not the same. Measure what you need and feed your body what you really need.
Yep, that's it. That's great summary. Yep.
We dropped a lot of knowledge bombs today, Peter. Just from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say one more time, hey, thank you for helping to save my life.
Oh gosh. Wow. I'm humbled. Yeah.
Yeah. It all comes back to you, and the Oscar-Julie connection all comes back to you. So thank you for not only introducing me to my business partner and the man who taught me everything I needed to save my life, but also someone who's turned out to be a brother. So I just can't thank you for joining us today and for sharing these knowledge bombs.
It's been great. And I'm just so inspired by you and what you're doing. And that MOJO Health is incredible. I'm just so excited to be on board with what you guys are doing. It's amazing. It's amazing. Wow. Kudos.
Thank you. It is a labor of love, as you know, but it is the only thing in my life that I think it's exactly what I'm meant to be doing. So I couldn't be more grateful to be doing it every day.
Cool. So, all right.
For all of our listeners, may you live long and lucky. Thank you so much for spending your time with us, and go to the grocery store and pick some great colors today. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. We so appreciate it.